Good morning. I wanted to talk this morning about sort of reading through the years and sort of how it starts, and then sort of how you support that through the years and how that really helps your main lessons. I have a lot of people that say, how are you getting all of this in, and how do you get it in with with all of your kids, and how do you study for all of the main lessons and how different they are? So let's start with like first grade. So if you follow the way that Waldorf lays out the letters and lays out reading, you should have a reader at the end of first grade or grade. So some kids are a little bit longer than others. My daughter that's now 15, she took probably until she was almost to the end of second grade to really take off. And she's an excellent reader. Super Sam, it was easily second grade. He had these giant goals of reading these Star Wars novels, and that's really what got him to really decide, hey, I need to practice. I need to get this going because I really want to do this. And he was 8 at the time, and so for him, it was sort of this incentive thing, which is pretty amazing because he's phlegmatic. So to look at your kids, if you're following the Waldorf curriculum and introducing the letters, introducing the sounds, going through them every week. So we would introduce the letters, and then when we would introduce a new one, we would say, okay, so this is the sound for C, and then we would also go through all of the ones that we had already done, so that we could sort of go through everything, and each day became a mini review on top of the new letter. So then at the end of the week, we would review them all. And we would do this even if it wasn't a school day. So on the weekends, in the car, when we're driving someplace, when we're going on a walk, hey, what's the sound for D? And that way we were constantly sort of talking about it, and maybe I would emphasize, go get the cat, or let's feed the cat, so that we could constantly sort of bring those sounds in. And that way he was, even though he wasn't a super confident reader, by the summer after first grade, he was decoding, and that's the place you want to get to. And again, some kids don't take off until they're 9 or 10 or 12. But they will take off. And so it's about this consistency of making sure that you're doing something every day. And once they are reading, then it's your job to sort of build on that every day. And if you take time off, and you take like the summer off, if you have a child that just barely started decoding at the end of first grade, I sure hope you're not taking the summer off. You need to read every day, like even on Sunday. Every day, even if it's just for 3 to 5 minutes, every day you've got to do something. And that sort of keeps it fresh for them, and it keeps them going. And I wouldn't do flashcards. We don't do those kinds of things. It's definitely not a Waldorf thing to do flashcards. So we never really started with that. I do love I love the book LMNOP. And we have the cards that go with that, but we don't use them as flashcards. So they're sort of used to decorate our school space, and I'll have them on the nature table the week that we're working on those letters. And so we used to get really excited to see the picture that went along with them. So that's different than using a flashcard that says, what does this make? What sound does this make? Kind of thing. So definitely utilize those things to sort of decorate your space and to give you ideas for main lesson drawings. But don't utilize them as necessarily as flashcards. We would, because there's a poem on the back of each one, we would look at the back and we would go, okay, let's see if we can find all the D's, and then go through and sort of make the sound of all of them throughout the poem. And sometimes the poems were super silly and didn't make any sense, and that made it even more fun because that's sort of the silly place that kids are in at that age. So I would definitely encourage you that when you're teaching reading, that you are doing something consistently, and if you have a child that's really struggling, that you're still doing something consistently. So definitely you can say, listen, I know that this is really frustrating to you. What can mom do to help you not feel like that? Because it's okay that it's hard for you. There were things that were hard for me, and then talk about things that were hard for you, and sort of build that. You really want to build that trust that it's okay that they're having a struggle, and that there are things in life that are a struggle. There are things in life for us as adults that are a struggle every day. And, I wouldn't pour out your heart to your 7-year-old, but I would say, it's really hard for mommy to stay on top of the dishes. So I totally get that you're struggling with reading. There are things that are really, really hard for me. So just really talk about that in a very sort of benign way. Then sort of after the reading, see, I think this is, especially for a homeschooler, and especially if you have more than one child, this is a golden place. Once you get them reading, and I'm not pushing them to read all through first grade. You want to let them unfold. But once they are reading and they're confident readers, probably by third grade, they're pretty confident, then I would have them do some of the main lesson reading, or main lesson reading that supports what you're going to be introducing. So for this year, Samuel was in third grade, and we used the Jacob Street books, and there's 3 of them. And if we did a main lesson on every story, wow, there's a ton of stories in there. So I would go through and I would pick the stories that I wanted to make sure we did in a main lesson together. So ones that I knew that would make a beautiful painting, or ones that I knew I wanted to do a drawing from, or maybe a modeling from. And that tended to be about every 4th or 5th story. And those stories are super short. Some of them are just a few paragraphs. Some of them are a couple of pages, but they tend to be pretty short. And so I would take about every 5th story, and he and I would do a main lesson off that, and he would read the rest as main lesson reading. And so I tend to start my kids off with 5 minutes per year of reading once they're good readers. So, and if that's a lot because your child is just barely, getting to that space, then cut it in half and gradually add 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes a month. So Sam was 9 in grade 3. And he would start out with 35, 45 minutes, and it goes up. And I actually cap it because I had kids that would have been like, sure, Mom, I'll read for 2 hours. And so I sort of cap it at an hour, and that's a lot of reading. And so, if you have a child that doesn't want to sit for an hour and do the reading, then totally fine. You can split it up. That's super helpful. But I take books that are good living books, and sometimes those living books are newer ones that are found at Barnes & Noble. Sometimes they're great books that are found. I love mainlesson.com. I love it. And if you really want hard copy, mainlesson.com sells hard copies, so you can also get a hard copy of all of their ebooks. You can also download them onto an e-reader. An e-ink reader is not as hard on the eyes as a computer screen, so you could totally download them to that. But there are some awesome old books for history. And I know I'm kind of a weird history buff, but there are some amazing books at mainlesson.com that we use in our main lessons all the time. So there's some great ones for Norse myth, and there's some great ones for Greek myths, and there's some awesome ones for the lives of the Romans. So there's some great ones. There's, of course, some great Waldorf resources as well. But I try to always give resources for families that, maybe they can't afford to buy the Waldorf book, and I totally get that. So you can go to mainlesson.com and you can read it off the screen, or, hand your child an iPad or something like that. And that's, it's not ideal for sure, but definitely get them reading something from that era that you're teaching. So I love that with the Romans, there's Roman Lives, and there's all these great books by these amazing authors that have been around for a long time, and so the books are in public domain, and it's great. They're great insights into just sort of these time periods, and amazing storytellers. So we have a lot of those listed right within our curriculum, and we also have a section on our blog called Reading Lists, and recommended reading and reading lists and supplies. And so there's actually a blog category there. So if you want to see what we recommend for going through the years, I think we have up through maybe grade 5 or 6 done, and so I need to add to it. But that's how we utilize reading with our main lesson time. So maybe let's just say we're working on the Roman Empire, and I've got a child reading a portion of a book. Now, I generally go through and at least heavily skim the books that I suggest for reading. Now, I'm on child number 4 that will be going through these, so I read them with Harry. So, I know what pages are really good to go with a certain lessons, and, we then talk about, so let's talk about what you read today. And he might be like, well, let me just tell you about the gladiators, and so then it opens us up into our main lesson topics, and it's very helpful then because even though they're not in a place of really being able to discuss back and forth in 5th and 6th grade, it gives them this great sort of background and understanding, and it's very beautiful when you're working at home. And so then when you've got several children, you can send one, or if you've got more than one reader, off to do the reading, and you can be working with the younger ones, and then you rotate them around. And that's really how we've worked with having so many kids and being able to meet everybody's needs. So, an older child would be off reading, and maybe, like I can remember, let's just take, for instance, when I had 5, so we had a baby, and we had Sam that was in kindergarten, and we had Ellie that was like in 5th grade, and Jacob that was in 7th, and Harry that was in 9th. And so I would send, the big kids all got to shadow a little person and help with that little person throughout their lessons. So maybe 2 of them would be reading, and one of them would come off their reading, and I would do their main lesson with them while other kids were playing with little kids. And that really fostered a sense of the bigger kids really caring and having a better relationship with the little ones. So our kids have really good relationships, and I really think that that's part of it. We've never sort of said, you have to do this. We've always said, as a family, this is what we do to help each other. And I could totally acknowledge, oh, Jacob, it's not your day today. I understand. You just can't handle a 5-year-old. So we're gonna give you a free pass today and let you get in a good place. And then tomorrow, you can help, and maybe Ellie can step in for you today, that kind of thing. So acknowledging when we're not in a good place, especially with kids that are sort of navigating their age group and their temperament and sort of where they are developmentally, you want to be able to give them a free pass on some of those days, because dang, it's hard to grow up, and it's hard being a grown up. So, I really try to sort of foster that sense for them. And let me just tell you, my kids miss each other terribly. So Harry's off on a mission. See his pictures right there. Harry's off on a mission. Jacob lives with my ex-husband in Utah, and my little kids miss them terribly. We're going to Utah in a few weeks, and so I'm super excited to see Jacob. and Jacob's super excited to see Soraya. So you have to work to really foster that sense of love. And I have to tell you, so my ex-husband didn't foster that sense with the big 3. And so they were really big fighters for a long time, and that was really hard. So even though they loved their smaller siblings, they sort of didn't like each other for a while. And we just had to keep fostering that sense of, this is safe. It's safe to have big feelings, and it's safe to sort of, struggle here, but this is how we're going to work through it together. So they became extremely helpful during main lesson periods, and they were willing, because they knew. So Ellie knew that if she helped with Sam for an hour, that meant that Jacob could get his main lesson done and get through it without interruption. And she knew that then he would help with Sam for an hour so that she could get an hour with me. So it gave them the sense of really working together and the sense of understanding what they needed to do. So I hope that helps sort of how you can utilize reading through the years, and how you can have it help you with your main lesson content. So, in our curriculum, I tend to give a lot of background information for mom. And then, sometimes that's really hard to go, all right, well, how do I sort of disseminate that to my child? And I think that, having really good books that, that they're doing for their reading time is super helpful. So what do you do if you've got a child that's really struggling with reading, somebody that So, I would look at some books on tape. There's some great history books on tape these days that you can utilize to help you through some of that. And don't stop working with them. Don't go, oh, well, they struggle, so this is so hard. Yeah, it is hard. But, when they get to the other side of that struggle, they will be so much happier that you helped them. So really try to keep your perspective through all of that, especially as they're dang hard, whether they be, a learning disability or something on the autism spectrum or something with sensory. They're dang hard. I know. I know. But if you can keep perspective for yourself, that's super helpful. And you will not be awesome every day. I'm not awesome every day. There are some days that I just plain suck. But I get up the next day and I rebuild whatever I broke and lovingly try again. Have a great day. Bye now.